Welcome everyone to the weekly crypto recap. This has been a pretty exciting week in blockchain tech and Bitcoin, not just because of the giant price movements, but because this has been blockchain week, which is where you have a huge number of events in New York City and all these people from all over the world come and gather and talk crypto. So it's been a pretty fun event, and I'm delighted to welcome to the show today Chris Karabatz, aka Zaphoid from Smart Cash, as usual. We also have Dustin, who's the host of the Did You Know podcast. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, it's been a fun week.
It's been a fun week. And later on, we have special guest Chris Pacia is going to be joining us to talk about some things in BCH. But to start off with, I did just want to give people a bit of an overview of what the atmosphere was like during blockchain week. We had the consensus conference, which was really the hub of blockchain week. I was pretty delighted and honored to be able to MC that, and it also gave me a good vantage point for just meeting guests backstage, hearing what they had to say about what's going on in crypto. So let's talk about this. Chris, you were here in blockchain week, so what were your thoughts about how it all went?
Everybody was pretty excited. We'll talk about the price movements a little bit. I think that really helped the mood for everybody, because if this was another bear week, I think everybody would have been a little bit down in the dregs, but thankfully everybody had good reason to be happy. I did see new faces. I talked to a lot of people who haven't been involved with crypto before, who were looking for ways they could get involved, investors and whatnot. So there's certainly more interest. There are certainly people around who don't want to miss another 2017 style move. And there are people around who really do care about what's going on behind the scenes, excited about the institutional people coming in, as well as there are some new people who are excited about the tech, even though we all know consensus is more about the investors than the tech people.
Yeah, I like the way that you say, like, there were even some people who were excited about the tech, as if it's this crazy thing. Well, I think that, one thing that I would say is consensus gets a lot of flack from people because basically it's a snapshot of the industry at the time, and that sometimes we don't like to look in the mirror, right? Sometimes the crypto industry is not the greatest thing in the world. And if we're looking at last year and the craziness of consensus there, like they had like 8,000 people. It was insane. It was giant. And that was a reflection of what crypto was like at the time. A bunch of get rich quick people who came into crypto who were like, price movements, that's something I want to do. So they all came to this conference. This year, I thought was substantially more subdued. As you said, a lot more tech focused. They even had a stage that was dedicated just to developers, which was kind of cool. They had like a business track. They had a demo, like product track. They had all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was a good transition for them to start looking at more of that stuff.
Absolutely. It was entertaining and a lot of fun, really. There was good excitement, good people who really cared about the industry, and they weren't getting laughed at by some of the more experienced people in the financial industry. It was certainly more of a respect, mutual respect going on, I think, that I've seen in previous events.
So let's talk about like the general vibe around crypto at the moment, because it's funny. You were just talking before the show, Dustin, saying that everyone's coming out of the woodwork and messaging you saying like, oh, is now a good time to buy? Mm-hmm. Like as soon as they start hearing Bitcoin in the news about price hike, then all of the friends, the fair weather friends come back and want to know how everything's doing. So, what do we think about the environment in crypto at the moment? Because also when there was the big spike, you had heaps of interviews on Bloomberg and Fast Money and all these people who were asked to come onto these shows because of the price movements. And overwhelmingly, the responses from these people in crypto interviewed was, oh, it's nice to see the narrative go back to Bitcoin. Before it was all about, blockchain tech and all these other applications. And now the narrative's returning to Bitcoin. Would you agree that that's the case, that the narrative's returning to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I would say so. 2018 was kind of a slump for a lot of the people that came in for getting, thought that they were going to get rich. There was a lot of building that went on in 2018 and 2019. And, I think that, this kind of reflects it a little bit. And of course, whether we like it or not, price does bring more eyeballs, and it brings a lot more interest from people. And while I don't necessarily think it's the best thing that people only get involved for, trying to make money, but getting more eyeballs, getting more people, in, gets them to, start to see different things, read different things, that actually starts to get them to understand the fundamentals and why, Bitcoin is the way it is. But you have seen a lot more Bitcoin focus. It start to regain its dominant. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but you notice over 2018, Bitcoin definitely regained the dominance in the market cap. And it was the one that was leading the pack as far as for price as well. And it was interesting, like I said, I had people going, "Hey, is this a good time to buy again?" And yeah, I'm definitely not going to jump into that as far as for giving people price when to buy sort of advices. I think just a minefield that I tried to navigate in 2017 somewhat unsuccessfully with some people.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's so hard. You start giving investment advice with this stuff and you say, oh yeah, Bitcoin, it's going to change the world. It's the future. And then you have a price dip and everyone's like, you lied. It's like, well, no, actually I stand by what I'm saying. I think it's going to change the world. It's going to be the future. But short-term price movements, that's not something I ever delve into.
I think one of the interesting things this year from a lot of the investor standpoint was the macro mood was a lot the macro mood as far as traditional markets at least was a lot more negative. I mean, we had the yield curve inversion. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how even the former head economist of the Swiss National Bank was talking about how crypto will be a competitor to central banks. We have the knowledge that if another recession hits, no major central bank has the wiggle room to actually adjust interest rates, the average for recessions. And a lot of the even traditional people are very aware of this macro situation and looking at Bitcoin and crypto as an exit or a way out. And I thought that was quite interesting to hear people talk about that, whom they aren't Austrian, they aren't ideologically driven. They're just seeing what's happening in the macroeconomic environment right now and seeing crypto as an alternative to central banks.
One thing that I will say about this movement back towards Bitcoin is I'm sure that that's a very public thing that's going on. But as you were saying, throughout the last year, people have just been quietly working on things as well. And like, I just did an interview an hour ago with the CTO of Florin Coin, lead developer, I should say, of Florin Coin, which is now known as Flow. Now, you guys don't remember Florin Coin because it was this thing that we thought of as this kind of shit coin. I did an interview with him at the New York Bitcoin Center 2014, start of 2014. So it's like a really long time ago. And it was during that boom of like, everyone has a coin. And, there are all these things that you're like, it's never going to go anywhere. Flow has become this tremendously successful, basically a database, a decentralized database that's being used by Caltech. It's being used by Overstock. It's like the thing no one hears about. So although you've got a huge amount of hype in the space on certain projects, and then some of these hypey things have disappeared, meanwhile, there are people who are quietly building other applications for this blockchain tech. And you're not really hearing about it because it's not as glamorous as talking about price movements and ICOs and all of that. So I try to stay away from the presumption that everything's back to Bitcoin again. I think the mainstream media, honestly, is always going to be off the beat with covering this stuff. And there's real work going on all throughout the ecosystem that no one's talking about. And I think that's kind of the most exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think it's less attractive, right? Because when Bitcoin first came on the scene, that's where wow, an alternative to, central banks and state managed currencies and inflation. And so that was really exciting. And now for a lot of people, that just seems kind of like old news, right? So there was that period, especially in 2017 of it's going to do everything from tell you when your bananas left this country and get to there and all this kind of stuff.
I still don't know when the bananas left. When am I going to get that application of blockchain tech?
Well, I'll be launching Banana Coin here very, very quickly.
Dustin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing that for all of us.
It's going to be an IEO, so I'll be free of any regulations.
Fantastic. So I want to talk, so I don't want to stay too much on Blockchain Week. but just to summarize all of this, it's been really fun. It's been great catching up with people, as it always is. It's nice to see everyone in one place coming together. You know, you get to see people face to face, which doesn't often happen in the crypto business, especially when you're dealing with decentralized tech, decentralized companies, decentralized money. Everything is spread out, and so all of your friends tend to be spread out. So I've had such a great time just catching up with people, and I was so delighted to be a part of Consensus and to have done a media corner at Magical Crypto. It was super fun from my perspective. But big news that happened through all of this is so someone mentioned, I guess I've got to figure out how to couch this. So I was at this kind of Australia room at Consensus, and this guy was like, "Did you hear? Whole Foods just started accepting crypto," and I'm like, "What?" And I start like flicking through trying to find sources for this, and everyone's like, "Yeah, Whole Foods is," and it became this big buzz thing. And I was like, "Did it really?" Because I'm sure I would have heard more about it. And sure enough, I'm going through these articles, and they're all phrased in this strange way. None of them are really saying that Whole Foods is accepting crypto, but they're all trying to insinuate that. What's actually happened is this company called Flexa has just partnered with a bunch of companies as kind of this intermediary. So we've got another intermediary that helps large companies that don't want to deal with crypto kind of deal with crypto. So that's what's actually happening. You've got Nordstrom, you've got Barnes and Noble, Whole Foods, bunch of companies who are now using this. Chris, you want to start off and kind of give us an overview of how this app actually works?
Well, from what I've been able to tell, Flexa interfaces with Apple Pay and uses Gemini for custodial services. So you as a crypto holder would send your Bitcoin or a few others to your Flexa wallet. And then at the time of purchase, I would use the Gemini custodial to swap between your Bitcoin and the fiat currency that is all Whole Foods or GameStop or whatever actually cares about, and make the purchase. It's basically the same concept as a prepaid debit card that we've all been using for a long time, and just pushing it a little bit further out so you're not actually doing the conversion to fiat right until you're actually buying, which is an improvement. Absolutely. It's just, I really somewhat aghast at all of the hype about, Whole Foods and GameStop, they're accepting crypto now. Like, no, they don't really care. They're not touching it. They have no idea you're using it. They're just accepting an Apple Pay transaction the same as any other they would accept. So it doesn't really affect them. It does make it easier for people to buy goods and services with their crypto, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the Whole Foods deciding that they're going to suddenly start accepting Bitcoin.
Right. And let's talk about Gemini's role in all of this. So they, first of all, I was interested because in some of these articles it's saying that, like the Gemini stablecoin is being accepted at all of these places. I'm like, why? Like, that's weird. And obviously that's all part of this this app, Flexa and Spedn. That's not one that rolls off the tongue as well as HODL.
No.
Right? Spedn is just kind of awkward. But that's the name of it, sort of a play on the HODL or biddle pattern.
I was going to say, it just reminds me of that meme of Steve Buscemi is like, how do you do, fellow kids? It's just, it seems like this come late term where it's like, hey, look at me and I'm hip. I'm with it. We got the spending.
It feels like somebody threw it out in the conference room and they could never think of anything better, so they just went with it.
Let's just go with it. Working title, it'll do. So Gemini is involved because they are actually custodying and insuring all of the crypto funds that are deposited into the app. So as Chris mentioned, you kind of fill up this this wallet with funds, and then it changes it at the point of transaction into USD, which is what is accepted on the other end. But you have to kind of have it filled with your funds in advance. And the people who custody it are Gemini. So they're insuring all the crypto funds to kind of take away the risk of using an app like this, which is interesting. And that explains why the Winklevoss twins were seen in Starbucks, using their Gemini coin to buy a coffee a few days ago.
Did you see that Starbucks employee? He looked to be about the least impressed with what was going on that I've ever seen.
But they couldn't get anybody else.
Yeah.
But Gemini's trying to fill an interesting place here. They're marketing themselves as the regulated Bitcoin exchange. They had, some billboards and whatnot up in New York. If you happen to listen to any traditional media, like say NPR, they're actually sponsoring various NPR shows and podcasts as the regulated exchange. And they're really trying to push themselves forward as this friendly, cuddly way for the New York or normal business people to get involved with crypto. That's safe and not weird anarchist or whatever. Even though, I mean, the Winklevoss twins are fairly crypto and fairly libertarian in their moods, but the way that Gemini is marketing itself is quite interesting and was probably somewhat necessary to be able to do something like this with Flexa.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, they're kind of movers and shakers who know their way around large partnerships. So made sense that something like this came along. I want to move on because we do have a lot of stuff to cover. Although I'm just kind of getting images of the Starbucks employee just being like, why are you making things harder for me? Like, I don't want to.
Well, I think that is a kind of important, because I think they do deserve some credit. They get a lot of crap in the space, and some for just reasons. But I mean, they have been at the forefront of social media startups and at Bitcoin. But to me, it just seems like this is like not a step forward, but kind of just a sidestep of because the whole point is to try to reduce friction. And now you have put it into this special wallet in Gemini. Then you got to send it. Then you got to print out this QR code receipt to do it. It's extra steps where if you're trying to convince somebody, you need to use whatever crypto that we're talking about for daily spending. All these extra steps versus why not just use a credit card?
What are the tax implications of?
Yeah, that's another big thing too.
Like, until we sort out that, I just don't see spending at merchants as being like in that sort of a regulated way as being helpful for people. I know some people who do like to buy things with crypto, but it's generally not done too publicly, and for good reason, because right now it doesn't make any sense to be spending something that you're spending capital gains on every time you make a purchase and having to track that. So I mean, that's a huge issue that we really need to get sorted if we want Bitcoin to stop just being like a fringe use case for purchases.
Yeah,
but
actually.
Sorry.
Oh, no, go on. I was just going to say that segues into various other things we wanted to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, so one thing I do want to talk about first, let's just mention the price movement, because that has been huge news this week. It goes up like $1,200 in a day, and then it crashes to, we have the biggest intraday price drop for over a year. So obviously that correction was expected. Was the boom expected? Like, I mean, we always kind of joke that around blockchain week, the price always spikes. So I think people are like around the buzz, expecting something like this, but it is, you could just tell, like, the atmosphere around blockchain week and all the events, everyone was so happy. They all pretend not to care about the price. It's about the tech, it's not the price. But you could tell, like, everyone's step was a little bit lighter. Like, they were all pretty happy that that we saw that price movement.
Yeah, when you see the green arrows up, it always makes everybody a little bit happy, especially after like 18 months of just watching, even if you're not looking at spending, right now, or you're a long-term hodler. I mean, it is always nice seeing you having more shiny things. It's a nice feeling.
Big numbers make people feel good.
Yep.
I'd agree that I don't think that this was necessarily expected right now. I think I talked somewhat last week about how a lot of this came right after we had our, the Golden Cross that happened, but a lot of people expected, I mean, I personally have expected us to have a downward correction for a while, and we just kept moving up. And it was somewhat surprising to me when we peaked over 8,000. I mean, this is, we were at 5,000 30 days ago. I mean, this is pretty insane. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the chart right now. So we were like 6,000 and something just a week ago. And so now to be looking at 7,000 and saying like, oh, it's a giant crash. Is everyone feeling it? That's up $1,000 in a week. That's pretty huge. Over the last 30 days, I mean, the chart just goes straight up. So as you said, Chris, we're looking at like 5,000 or just above there at the start of the month. So this is a pretty giant leap.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like mid 2017, as much as I hate to say it. And if you look through September through November of 2017, you see a lot of price movement similar to what we had here. I'm not, believes me, I'm not calling for another, late 2017 over the next several months, but it does have that feeling, and we're starting much higher now than we were at the beginning of 2017. So it's
true.
very interesting. There are definitely some noisy bulls out there. I think they may be a bit premature, but the market loves to prove everybody wrong.
Indeed, it does. So one thing that I do want to move on for, like talking about all this blockchain hype and everything, one thing that we had at Consensus, so we had Andrew Yang attend. Now, I don't know what you all think about Andrew Yang. I'm just going to I think I should just go straight into this, because he's called like the crypto candidate, and I'm surprised how many people in crypto are interested in him. I think that's why he was invited to speak. I think he's atrocious. He's atrocious. He's so bad. Like, this is a man who wants to implement a social credit system like in China. This is not something that we want. So what was interesting for me was seeing an audience that was very like high energy, interested in watching him speak, and hearing what he said during the conference as well. It's funny to see people respond positively for this, because I heard him say some things that I really disagreed with, and I kind of wanted to talk to them about that. But what do you all think about just like his general overview when he's saying that crypto is going to be this big part of our future, and have his campaign accepting crypto donations, etc.?
Yeah, I think he's pretty gross. I think he's very smart. He's captured on kind of the mimetic quality of the presidential campaign, the Yang gangs trending and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's where he's gotten all of his kind of momentum from. But it is, to me, kind of gross. The amount of like just looking on kind of the Bitcoin crypto Twitter, how many people are, and I got that a lot of people are ironically kind of going along with that, but the people are unironically thinking that, well, he's friendly to Bitcoin. Yeah, give me my $1,000 and I'll just buy Bitcoin with it. And it's like, so, like, not to make this into some sort of like deep dive into like economics or anything like that, but
we always have a deep dive into economics. You go for it. You do that deep dive. We're all here for
just
it.
kind of a topical look at his platforms. He's talking about carbon tax, VAT taxes, increased income taxes. I mean, it's like a tax on everything you can imagine, probably up into including shaving your dog. And and then in exchange for that, you get $1,000 a month. It's like, oh great, we're just one check away from, economic utopia. And I don't mind the kind of ironic trolling that goes on Twitter. I find that actually quite enjoyable. But it's when you move from to the unironic support of that, and just kind of like you said, I watched a little bit of his speech at Consensus that was posted up, and I couldn't last through most of it. And to me, it was just kind of slightly cringy to hear that many, that many applauses, especially when you had, as somebody tweeted out, I forget the gentleman's name, sorry about that, but he posted up like, why are people, applauding, this socialist when you got Ron Paul speaking in some like,
I know,
coat closet down the way. It was
so like, I was sad to see Yang on the stage and not see Ron Paul on the stage as well. It's Ron Paul had this giant line all the way around the hall for people wanting to go and get a book signing, because he's the real deal. Ron Paul is this very economically savvy man, very principled. I don't get that at all from Yang. I see someone who's riding on memes and populist support and trying to make a bit of a splash, get attention for himself. But one thing I will say, like, just in terms of bad policy, so he's talking in the presentation, and it's a double-edged sword here. He was talking about how bad it is that different states regulate things differently. I understand where he's coming from, and I sympathize to a certain degree. Like, for example, getting a money transmitter license, you have to get one in every single state. That's a regulatory nightmare. That's why so many people are leaving and going to Europe, because there's just one that you need, right? It's a lot easier for people to manage their businesses. But at the same time, do we really just want one choice in America? Because which choice is that going to be? Right now, you have states like Nevada, that are implementing these terrible rules. You have New York that killed crypto. So what, you just want to follow New York's rule and have that across all of America? Like, at least in America, the fact that we have these choices, you do have the New Yorks, but you also have the Wyomings. So that choice, I mean, it's a trade-off, because again, it makes it a lot more complicated for businesses. But at the same time, at least there are some states where the businesses can operate. And if consumers want those services, they could open LLCs in Wyoming themselves, do all of their business and transactions through an LLC rather than, as an individual. So I much prefer a system where there are alternatives. And Yang was, really calling for, let's just have a blanket rule. I don't want to put that much power in the hands of bureaucrats. I don't want to put that much power in the hands of politicians, because they're going to make a mistake. They're going to do an appalling job. They're going to regulate this the same way that they've regulated drugs. It's going to be a nightmare. And you're going to need like more woke states like Colorado, with their drug policy to come in and fix things. So I definitely don't want to see that. So another reason why I was unimpressed with Yang.
No, people cheering for Yang, calling for regulatory clarity, they assume that means it'll be a good regulation, when, regulatory clarity could just mean that everything's banned. I mean, that's clear. I'm not saying that he's going to do that, because it'd be pretty lame of him to do that after accepting it for donations. But, just because he's calling for big central control over it does not mean that it'll be good, big central control over it. It just, he's a technocrat, and technocrats like having one person in charge making the rules, because it's easier. And yeah, businesses agree. It is easier to have a bad regulation that doesn't change than to have different regulations all over the place, but still, it's not better as far as freedom or even economics is concerned.
Absolutely. Let's move on. I don't want to waste too much time talking about Yang. So let's talk a little bit. Let's just update people on what's going on with Bitfinex. So over the past few weeks, this has kind of been craziness that we've been keeping you updated on. So basically, in a nutshell, for anyone who hasn't been keeping up, Bitfinex, they lost $850 million dollars. Apparently that money was like being held by this other entity that then kind of disappeared and ran off with the money. Or I mean, is my understanding correct there, Chris? You can back me up there.
From my recollection, it was more that those funds were locked up for something unrelated. The funds were there, there's nobody could access it.
Well, it's being held by Crypto Capital, which is a payment processor, and they lost access to it there. So it seems that something happened there, and then Crypto Capital got indicted for some sort of corruption on that front. So all these things happened. But what was interesting for me is that you had this loan that was given by Tether to Bitfinex to cover these funds so that they could keep operating, keep giving funds to their consumers, customers, and all of that. But then the Attorney General stepped in of New York and froze those. And then you had the Supreme Court jump in to say, like, can you justify why you've frozen those funds? And so this is kind of an ongoing battle where basically the Attorney General said, like, you've got to freeze the transfer to Bitfinex, and Tether, you can no longer give them any money. Tether responded and said, you need to ease this. Bitfinex responded and said, you need to ease this. Please, like, loosen the fund restrictions. And then they've just come out with an announcement that basically said that, let me pull that out. So it does seem like they can continue business as usual. The Tether funds are still frozen. They can't give any more loans to Bitfinex, but it does seem like they're able to loan out their funds as required for normal business activity, whatever that means. So so that is something that, that's kind of an update that's going on right now, with Tether being able to resume their business essentially.
Yeah, and it's all sorts of messed up. I mean, none of us are really pleased with how New York's handling this, but also none of us are really thrilled with Tether either. So it's sort of like, New York's being a dick about this, but we don't trust Tether, so maybe they're right. Who knows at this point? Hopefully that there's some clarity as time goes on. It just seems the way that New York is handling this is over the top, and maybe they can justify it after the fact, but I'm doubtful of that. But one of the other things here about this is they say they raised close to they said they sold 100% of their tokens for 1 billion in USDT.
Oh my
God.
God.
Like who's doing this? Like, who is giving them this money right now? I don't understand. I don't understand that thought process at all.
Probably people hoping that it'll be the next BNB, right? And they'll get a 400%, bump. But if they need it, I have the money for Bitfinex. if they I got 100 trillion.
$100 trillion Zimbabwe note, which we know is worth at least $30.
I think it's like 80 on eBay. It's funny. It's actually worth more now as a collector's item than it ever was actually as a currency.
Yeah.
Wow. My gosh. So let's that's the next thing that I wanted to mention about the whole Bitfinex Tether thing. So they have Bitfinex is going to list its new exchange token starting Monday. So we'll have to see what happens there, whether the price tanks, whether it goes up. I'm not sure what to expect.
So far there hasn't really been a single, maybe one IEO that has actually gone up in price since full listing, and the rest of them have all just been complete horror shows. So whatever, Bitfinex got its money, so what does it care?
Yeah, they've done worse than Uber.
Goodness me. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about Bitcoin Cash's scheduled hard fork that was tripped up by a software bug. So there are some interesting, strange things happening there. I wanted to also welcome to the show Chris Pacia. Welcome, Chris. He's the lead front-end developer for OpenBazaar and also a Bitcoin Cash developer.
Yep. You hear me okay, or am I too quiet?
You sound great.
Okay, great.
Super. So walk us through what happened there, because I read that, there was this hard fork, but then there was a strange bug that coincided. It seems like something fishy was going on there. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so it this looks like someone was, someone tried to attack Bitcoin Cash yesterday, basically. There was a bug in the Bitcoin ABC version of the software, which is the main one that people use for Bitcoin mining. I think a couple people use the Bitcoin Unlimited for mining, but it's only a few. But there was a bug in the Bitcoin ABC software that basically, if you broadcasted certain types of transactions, you could prevent the miners from mining blocks, including any transactions at all. So basically the miners, there was about an hour and like 10 minutes that like 7 or 8 blocks were mined that didn't contain any transactions during that period. And I think that bug had been around in the code for, I think, like 6 months and unknown. And so someone obviously looked over the code, found out about the bug, and rather than, responsibly reporting it like, you should be doing, decided to try and attack Bitcoin Cash with it, and decided to attack Bitcoin Cash right at the moment HardFork was activating, probably
coincidence there.
Yeah, to try and cause maximum confusion and I don't know, for PR effect and what have you.
And there was also a giant short position that was taken out against Bitcoin Cash. So tell us about that, because that seems like it's not coincidental either.
Yeah, I didn't look too deep into this, but I did see some threads where people said there was like $50 million worth of shorts on Bitfinex that had been opened up, recently. So it seems like the strategy may have been attack Bitcoin Cash, try and do maximum confusion, and then profit from shorting it. Didn't particularly work because it was, Bitcoin Cash was back up and running within an hour. I think, they diagnosed the bug within like 40 minutes and had a patch out. And the software was, the network was back confirming transactions again in a little over an hour. And actually the price went up and not down yesterday. So whoever took out that big short position, I don't know how long it was for, but there was the potential there. They could have actually lost money rather than making money.
I hope so, because it seems like kind of dick move, right?
Yeah. 180,000 Bitcoin Cash funded that short position right after the attack got underway yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Gosh.
And then
I mean,
it went up about 9% in 4 hours after that.
Yeah, so it went up. Unfortunately, the whole market tanked today, but that's unrelated. So maybe the whoever took out that short position kind of lucked out with the market tanking overall. But yeah, so I mean, it's these sorts of bugs happen. You kind of hope to minimize them. You hope that they're really not that bad or that severe. This one wasn't that severe in terms of like the worst that could have happened, and the outcomes to fix it within an hour was pretty good.
Yeah, no, that seems like it was handled really well and there was minimal damage. So that's good. And a lot of FUD kind of surrounding it. I'm hearing people be like, Bitcoin Cash, that's why you shouldn't have things so centralized, obviously referring to the fact that a lot of people are using ABC. So that's it all seems to be part of this PR machine that whirs around Bitcoin Cash constantly.
Yeah. I mean, there were some like FUD tweets out there. It was like Bitfinex tweeted like the Bitcoin Cash network forked, and we've got old clients are not following and all, and it was just a sensationalist tweet to try and make it sound like there was some kind of catastrophic event. This was even before this attack started, and it was like, well, this was planned for over 6 months that there was going to be a fork,
right?
So.
Oh my gosh. Well, it seems like everything's underway now and the whole market is kind of doing some strange things. So I think it's hard to see what the effects are, but it seems to be kind of negligible. And Chris, while we've got you here, I did want to mention, so there was this tweet by Skylark Cash talking about more Craig addresses that turn out not to be Craig addresses. Have you been following this at all?
Yeah, I did see someone signed a message with an address that was listed in Craig's list, I guess, of addresses that are part of his trust.
Yeah, so like to explain to people, he's basically had to provide a list of addresses. He's been asked by the courts to provide a list of addresses that he owns. I'm not sure why, but that's what's happened. And then one of the addresses got signed, basically proving that that's actually not his address. And so now there's a little bit of controversy about like whether it was actually correct that he provided that initial list of addresses, whether that was true. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, actually, to be fair, though, this address, I believe, comes from, it's not the one that got leaked, the metadata leak on the PDF just recently, but it was the one that was listed in the original Tulip Trust that was used as the basis, I guess, for the loan that WizSec had dumped. But it as it is, and Chris could probably talk more about this, as is most stuff relating to the Craig Wright and Kleiman case. It's all just so obfuscated and difficult to actually kind of muddle through what's actually been said, claimed. Well, now I was being loaned this, so it wasn't really mine, but it was kind of mine because it was coming from my assistant.
Yeah, from my understanding, this particular list of addresses has been out for a long time, I think. I don't think it's related to the disclosure that Craig was required to do recently.
Right.
And it's also not clear whether Craig specifically claimed to own these or whether they claim that it was like, I don't know, the other people in his trust were that address. I'm not 100% sure on that. But basically, there was an address in some documents purporting to have some money in it related to Craig and all this stuff that is probably owned by someone else due to, them signing a message saying Craig doesn't own it.
Right. And this all comes on the back of that article that Jamison Lott put out last week, where he goes through all of the facts that we have that would go against the theory that Craig is Satoshi. And Jamison's been very careful with how he words all of this. He's not coming out and saying anything. He's just saying, these are the facts that we have. Decide for yourself. And it's actually been a really helpful list for people just so that they could go through and make up their own mind. I mean, it seems like you have a camp of people who are very much like 100% he is, and they'll find any way to justify like how, you know, this red flag is actually not a red flag, and they'll explain it away. But there are only so many times I think you can explain away these red flags before you're like, when you have a big bunch of red flags, like so many of them, should you start second guessing your presumptions? But
yeah, including things like calling himself a doctor before he was actually awarded a doctorate degree, which is actual fraud. You know.
Oh yeah, no, there's been a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is very interesting. I mean, I think most people are on the kind of the same page in regards to this. Is that there are some pretty simple ways to go about proving, at least to a degree, that you actually hold the keys now, and maybe not necessarily it's not proof that you held it then, but yeah, it's very interesting. So I think everyone's kind of already made up their minds on this, and it's just a small group of devotees that are still, you know, holding strong and true to the faith.
It's true to the faith. I think that's a pretty good way of saying it. But it was interesting because in past conferences, there have been references to Craig, but I didn't hear any talk about him at this conference. So I'm wondering whether that's dying down, like what's happening. Yeah, consensus. There wasn't much talk at all. So that's good. Hopefully, all that FUD is dying down.
You have on the list the Flexa. Did you already cover that?
Yeah. We talked about Flexa and what's happening there. I mean, one other giant that I do want to mention is Amazon recently. So they just came out and said that they have patented this proof of work cryptographic system. Everyone's saying it's like this blockchain tech. So it seems that they've taken this open source technology available to everyone, changed it slightly, and put a patent on it, which they've been successfully awarded, which is a little scary. And I haven't looked into what exactly it is that they have patented, but kind of twofold, two things there. One side of things, it's interesting to see Amazon get involved with all of this stuff, and not surprising. If this is cutting edge tech, you presume that eventually all the major players are going to be working on this, and especially if you're a retail business, this is definitely a technology that would allow, you know, cheaper in-house payments and all that kind of stuff. So that's interesting. At the same time, I never like seeing anyone being awarded patents for this type of tech, because I kind of see as the community owning it, and unless they're creating patents that are defensive patents and they're going to allow anyone to use it. But I highly doubt Amazon is going to do anything of the sort.
I have looked into the Flexa a little bit. I could give you my thoughts. I don't know if you mind switching back to that topic.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'd love that.
So there's not a whole lot of information out there from what I could tell. It's just like a couple web pages and a couple blog posts. But it looks like they have the basic setup. Kind of looks like there's this ERC20 token called Flexicoin that the basic idea is you hold that as collateral, and then as long as you're holding that as collateral, they'll allow you to make like zero confirmation payments to them, which they would convert into like dollars and send to the merchants. So I think that's kind of how they're sort of planning to get around like the zero conf issue in the payment processor part. It's a little bit weird because, well, not weird, not unsurprising, but like, they say on their blog post, they're like, we looked at hundreds of different tokens and we found that none of them were right for our use case. So we had to create our own. Well, of course, because they want to do an ICO with it. But so that basically that Flexicoin, you'd be required to hold it for collateral, and then you'd make these zero comp payments to the merchants. And this kind of lends itself a little bit to almost kind of requiring a custodial environment, because so like, let's say I'm a wallet developer, and I think that the plan is for the wallet developers or wallet providers to actually be the ones putting up the collateral, not the end users. And so the end user wouldn't have to deal with the Flexicoin. It would be like the wallet providers. But if it's not a custodial scenario, then the wallet provider has to worry about the end users double spending on them and them losing their collateral, right? So, but if you have a custodial type situation, then you can guarantee you're not going to double spend and lose your collateral. So I think that's kind of what's going on. But it may be possible to use something like, I was thinking, we have this concept of zero comp forfeit payments in BCH, which enables you to kind of put up collateral for a zero comp payment. And so it might be a way that you could create like a Flexa gateway, where the gateway itself puts up the collateral, but then the end users put up like the collateral in like their own native currency, rather than having to deal with the Flexa coin. So there may be some ways to build a non-custodial wallet that way and still make it work. We'll have to wait and see what their protocol looks like, how open it is, what the
Are
terms.
they planning to do anything like that? Because I haven't heard them talking about non-custodial anything.
Well, they talk about making it an open protocol for other people to use. So it's a question of what that looks like. What are the terms and conditions? Will they allow non-custodial wallets? You know, that sort of stuff. What are the requirements for the people putting up the collateral? There's a lot of unknowns, but conceivably, just from the high level overview that I have, it sounds like you could build something potentially non-custodial that way, but it would still require someone to put up some collateral somewhere.
Right. And does anyone have anything to add on the Amazon stuff, the patents that have just been filed and approved?
This is one of those. This is one of those things that I just came across right before the show and haven't looked into it too much. This does kind of fit into their whole, one-click blockchain solution for businesses. So it probably is intended to fit into there to help businesses secure stuff on some sort of blockchain. It's possible in the future they could try to use this to attack other public chains, even though the patent itself does not make mention of blockchains directly or cryptocurrencies. So it's just one of those things that we'll have to keep an eye on and see what Amazon does. I know that Amazon has been talking about launching their own cryptocurrency, similar to what Facebook has announced, but there's no real details on that either. So this could just be related to their own currency they're planning on launching in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just going to say, I was in the same boat. I just started kind of reading about this, but it makes sense. I imagine that most companies are behind the scenes kind of doing this sort of same thing. I'm always fully supportive of the defensive patents, just to kind of try to stop any nefarious folks in the in the commercial space who want to try to use this as kind of a patent trolling opportunity to shut down systems that they don't like.
Well, I mean, Amazon has a record of doing that sort of stuff in the past, not with patents, but like, for example, with the internet sales tax, they've been big proponents of that, basically because they're large enough that they can handle that. And also they have physical locations in different states as well now, so they're paying the sales tax anyway. So they've been a company that has not done some particularly good things against online retailers. So I don't know. We'll have to see what they do there, but it doesn't look like something I'm particularly excited about. I'm not sure if I'd use their online currency. Maybe I will. I don't know. We'll have to see. Like it's just not something that's kind of on my radar at the moment. One thing that I do want to go in, I just want to kind of update some people on some different news that has gone on over the past couple of weeks that we've had some developments in. So Binance, of course, they had their giant hack. They had 7,000 Bitcoins stolen from their exchange's hot wallet. So actually they've just announced they went back online on Wednesday. So withdrawals, everything, a fine there. Everyone was kind of saying like, oh, this is terrible. And, that's why Binance is awful. But really, they set up this emergency fund, covered all of their users' funds. No one lost money, and now they're back, operating, and anyone can withdraw. So I have to commend them on how they handled all of this.
Yeah, they seem to have kept running along. I'm pretty sure they are right back to number one in volume and still chugging along and still expanding on their decks and still keeping working. So apparently they want to make sure that they make back this 7,000 BTC worth as soon as possible.
Yeah. And it's, so go ahead, Dustin.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say this was kind of one of those, just the weirdness of this pump. You had, Bitfinex having issues, Binance getting hacked, and then it jumped. So that led me to believe that there was, either there was something goofy going on, or maybe we've reached a point where we're kind of a lot more stable than we used to be. But it was very strange to see, like, because something like this, a year and a half, 2 years ago would have been a major, market sell off or something like that. So it was just kind of interesting at the least.
Well, I feel like it's a completely different scale to what we've seen in the past. I mean, when Mt. Gox collapsed, the entire site collapsed. It's very different from Binance, where it was like, oh yeah, we'll probably make this back in like a month. We would have made back all of this money. So, I mean, they have such high trading volume and account for such a huge amount of the market that it was kind of like a drop in the bucket for them.
It was like 1 or 2% of their funds or something.
It wasn't even their funds. It was just the funds in that particular hot wallet. So that was completely discounting everything in their cold wallets, in their emergency fund. Like it seems that there was a lot of faith put in them that people believed that things were going to be okay. And I mean, we can talk about Justin Sun's tweet where he's like, I will give you 7,000 Bitcoin. I mean, it was, when I first mentioned it, I didn't mention it correctly. I said that, oh, well, this was a show of faith in the exchange, that they were going to bounce back. He trusts them with the money. But what Justin Sun, if you actually look at his tweet, he was saying, if you will allow me to deposit this money, I will use it to then buy up all of these coin, like Tron coin and all of this. So he was really just wanting to pump a lot of money into his coins to take that opportunity. So really not quite
like an ETH bot.
Yeah, not
ETH giveaways.
Exactly. Give away Teslas.
He'd love to buy up his token on a closed exchange where you can't deposit or withdraw, so more supply can't show up. That'd be great for his price.
That would have been fantastic for him. But I mean, that aside, I think that there was there were a lot of people out there who saw what happened with Binance and just weren't too phase. So I think you're right, Dustin. This could just be that the market is getting more stable. We've definitely seen that as like all of the ETF announcements have come along and the market doesn't really move, and all of these new announcements come along and the market doesn't really move, because we've had years of this now. This is just an ongoing thing, and we're just not as susceptible to those kinds of announcements, because we're a lot more skeptical about announcements, and we're just a bit numbed from everything.
But I think not so much numbed as, the ETFs are exactly the right analogy here. Is anybody who was going to be freaked out or excited about ETF announcements or cancellations has long since left the market. And the same with Tether FUD. I mean, the people who freak out about Tether supposedly not being solvent probably bailed months ago.
Absolutely. They're probably, they haven't been involved for a long time. So, I mean, I just wanted to let people know that withdrawals are back online, deposits are back online. So Binance is operational again. And we'll have to see, like they said, that they have closed all of their security holes that they know about, all the vulnerabilities there, and patched that. But we never really know. These things come out of nowhere and they're exploited. And so we'll have to see. And hopefully they'll be still putting money back into their emergency fund. I think it's 10% of all of the fees go into this emergency fund. So seems like things are going all right there.
It seems everything's just chugging right along. So good for Binance and being filthy rich.
Yeah, and let's move on to the next exchange. So another exchange we've talked a lot about on the show is Cryptopia. They're in New Zealand, and they were working with law enforcement to figure out the hack that happened at the start of the year. Now, they've actually decided, I mean, they were planning to go back online, but they've actually decided that they're just going to liquidate. They think that this is the best option at this stage because there's a lot of money has been lost, and a lot of their ability to trade and to operate has really been inhibited. So they're closing its doors. So any thoughts on that update?
They've been slowly trying to bring tokens back online, enable deposits and withdrawals. I'm not sure who would ever have actually deposited things there, but apparently people were. Throughout most of April, they claimed to be hard at work at this. Then on April 26th, they said that on the following Monday, they'll be putting the site into maintenance for a couple hours, and we'll keep you updated onto our progress. And then 0 tweets until May 14th when they announced that they'd be going into liquidation. So something went horribly wrong. and they just decided that there was no way to come back from it, either based on whatever the maintenance they were doing or something else. And so, yeah, nobody really knows what's going to happen to the funds. I mean, a good number of people still have funds with random coins locked up at Cryptopia, and all those funds are likely never going to be seen again and going to be out to be paid to debtors, likely, and not to the people who actually held the coins. But they haven't fully announced everything yet. They did announce on May 16th. They said, please do not send any deposits to Cryptopia. Who was still doing it, I don't know, but apparently some people were, and that's making life more difficult for them. And yeah, it's sad. I mean, Cryptopia, a lot of people, like, they used Coinbase and they used Cryptopia, and that was it. I mean, a lot of people didn't do anything else for their alts. And yeah, it's going to require a lot of time. If you want to get your crypto back, it's going to be taking some direction from New Zealand courts, and that is not likely to move very quickly. So you may get a little surprise a couple years from now when they try to send you your crypto back.
This is on schedule, but I do just want to mention a similar thing of what's happening with Mt. Gox, because this is kind of an ongoing saga. This isn't anything related to news this week or in any articles that we're citing, but there's this ongoing, like, basically they were ready to give money to the creditors of Mt. Gox and basically pay people back for money that they lost in there. And but now we have this lawsuit that we're dealing with where a company has sued them for, I think it's like $16 billion, basically because of a lost opportunity, not lost funds. But the idea was that there was this group that was going to create this subsidiary in America of Mt. Gox, and they kind of had this deal that they were going to build this out. And so they're kind of thinking about all the money that they might have made had Mt. Gox been a good exchange that made it to the US, and then suing Mt. Gox for like $16 billion to cover these funds, these hypothetical funds of what they might have won. Like, it's just this crazy thing. I know a lot of people who lost money in Mt. Gox who were on the brink of getting their money back. They were ready to, like, it's all happening, and now it's all being held up again by this lawsuit. So it's just kind of this, like, nothing in crypto, it seems, with money to do with money being given back moves fast at all. It's just all goes slowly. Everyone wants a piece of the pie, and always these lawsuits coming in. So any thoughts on what's happening there?
Yeah, that was really I kind of just been reading up on it just a little bit here and there throughout the years, and basically from what I know, from what I've read, is that this is, I believe I just pulled up one of the things, is CoinLab.
Yeah.
And basically their lawsuit is like, we talked about working together and then it didn't work out, so you owe me for what I probably could have done. It's like it's the weirdest thing, and they just kind of, I guess they've been a thorn, from what I've read about, the ongoing with the trustee and the trustees and everything like that. It's been kind of like this ongoing thing of, they've just been a thorn in the side, and like every time that they think that, okay, we're making forward progress, they keep on jumping in and going like, you owe us $50 trillion because that's what we could have made if everybody in America had bought
hypothetically, we might have made this if we, like, it's just ridiculous. You're betting on something that hasn't happened, like, and it's crazy. And even you had Roger Ver, he's an investor in what's it called again? Is it CoinLabs? CoinLab, thank you. So he's an investor in CoinLab, and he even said, guys, you need to drop this lawsuit. You got to just let the people at Mt. Gox get their money back.
That company was a basket case too. I remember way back in the day, I felt like they pivoted 2 or 3 times before they decided to, like, try and buy Mt. Gox or whatever they did. And so, I mean, I can't imagine that company having made any money, given just how much they couldn't. They just kept pivoting from one thing to another.
Yeah, no, it's craziness, and it makes me sad to see the people who have money in Mt. Gox not get their funds back because of this ridiculous lawsuit business.
They feel like they're rent seekers, and they're just trying to bug them enough where till they go like, okay, here's 1.5 million or whatever. Like, would you take that just to go away so we can finish this up? And it's sad because there's people that really hurt back when that happened, and now they're kind of seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and these these thieves are just kind of coming out of the woodwork to go, I want my cut first, and then you can get what's owed to you.
Right, right. So I want to move along. I've just got a couple more things to mention. I'm just going to read a couple of headlines and breeze through some things before we end up on our last topic. So Coinbase, they opened up XRP trading for New York residents. This is something that people have been waiting for a while. I'm not going to dwell on this. It's not that interesting, but wanted to mention it. Also want to mention that Poloniex is geofencing some altcoins because of SEC security scares. So they're actually disabling certain coins from being exchanged for customers in the US. And that's another interesting thing. Again, not spending too much time on it. The last thing I want to end with is this Justin Sun TRON scandal that's going on with his ex-CTO. So for anyone who wasn't following this, the ex-CTO of TRON left and said, basically, listen, this isn't as centralized. This isn't as decentralized as it used to be. It's kind of become pseudo-centralized. He left, caused an uproar doing that. And then Justin Sun turned around and said, actually, you were fired for embezzlement and fraud. And now the ex-CTO is coming back and saying, nope, that never happened. And so there's kind of this back and forth going on there. Tron is always a big believer in spin and marketing and all of this. I don't know if anyone was around Consensus, but there were giant signs on all of the elevators saying like, we're going to create the decentralized internet. And Rizzo kind of gave him some flack for that in their interview, saying like, define decentralized internet. How are you going to do this? What do you mean? All of that, really getting him to explain it. But it is interesting watching this back and forth of what's going on there, and also to say that Tron isn't that decentralized, especially with the rhetoric about decentralization. So the ex-CTO says that the top 27 nodes or block nodes have more than 170 million TRX votes. Most of them are controlled by Tron. So that does seem to go hand in hand with the idea that it's not that decentralized at the moment. Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
It's Tron. Tron is drama in this space. That's all.
Drama.
Yeah, I was mostly surprised just because he didn't actually announce that he was going to make an announcement about this announcement. So just when he actually just came out to say it straight out was kind of straight shooting, which is, and didn't hype it. But yeah, no, it just seems kind of like a weird thing. Like a boss, like, you can't quit. I fire, you're fired. And yeah, it's a basket case. And to be fair, I've never really looked that deeply into Tron because there's enough people who I trust their opinions that have said that this thing is just, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Well, if there are no more comments on that, the one thing that I do want to close on is that 60 Minutes just released a report about Bitcoin Pizza Day and other things. It's interesting to watch them kind of take note of Bitcoin. It's always in the worst possible way. It's always kind of this misguided, like you had Anderson Cooper's like, you spent all this money, and he's talking to Lazos, the guy who bought the pizzas, gave away the Bitcoin, said, well, that's like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of pizza. Don't you regret it? And the guy's like, well, that's not really how you think about it. And then they cut him off, and it goes back saying like, do you cry yourself to sleep at night? And the guy's like, no, that's not really, like, by today's standards. But, and then they kept like kind of, doing these interesting edits. But yeah, again, they're all about the drama. They want to talk about a guy who lost a whole lot of money buying pizza for Bitcoin. It's not really the point. I think the point is that Bitcoin Pizza Day is celebrated, and that's May 22nd for anyone who doesn't know. So it is coming up. Definitely encourage you all to celebrate it, because really that is the first time that anyone had traded Bitcoin for real world goods. That was what proved the model. That was the first time we actually had someone testing out this system and saying, will this work as a currency? Does this have value? Can it be exchanged for real world goods? So this guy's trailblazer, we shouldn't be feeling so sorry for him that he lost his Bitcoin. We should be saying like, thank you for being the first person to do this and for setting this precedent and playing a large role in history. So I'm glad that they're mentioning him. It's always going to be in the wrong light, but it is nice to see Bitcoin getting some.
A good response too from when people are like, "Oh, you do you regret spending those Bitcoins? And it's like, I mean, you could just say, do you regret spending dollars back in 2010 instead of trading them for Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. Because I mean, 2% inflation a year is giant.
Yeah, I mean, do you lose sleep at night because you bought a $10 pizza with US dollars rather than buying Bitcoin with that US dollars?
Right, that's another thing.
Every day, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's you're always going to get that, but let me know if anyone is going out and doing anything fun for Bitcoin Pizza Day, then let me know. Send me your pictures or whatever. Maybe I'll do a compilation of how people are celebrating Bitcoin this year, because it is definitely a great thing to celebrate. But that is all the time we have on the show this week. As always, I thank you all for joining us here, chatting about crypto. It's always a blast. It's my favorite part of the week. And this is a great way to end Blockchain Week, New York City. It's been an incredibly exciting week. Been super fun with all these conferences and seeing all these awesome people from all around the world in one place. So just kind of wrapping it up and ending it with a recap of all the crypto news has been quite delightful. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone in the chat who's been here. It's so wonderful to have you here. And thank you for joining us every week. It's just really, really great. And thank you to the people who, for all three of you who've been on the show, and you've all been on the show before, and I always adore having you here and sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you, Chris, and Dustin.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate having us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure.
See you guys later.
later.
All right, everyone, go and have a wonderful weekend and enjoy yourselves, and we will check back in soon. Bye.
Sayonara.